Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin, and another exciting week and, in a lot of ways, troubling week in the past week since our last podcast. But some interesting news. I really believe that RFK and the whole third party movement is gaining a lot of steam. He needs, and I think he's going to get, 1 million signatures, and he's doing that through his website uh, Kennedy24.com. And he has significant donors, and one in particular that's willing to put forth $15 million in the effort. He is getting some headwinds, of course. States like Utah are trying to pull some shenanigans, but I think he spells a lot of trouble, especially for Biden, but both parties, because I'm on board with that. I'm sick of there's no other people. We've talked about this before over the last 70 years, both Republicans and Democrats. If you tried to f up a country, you could not have done better than our current political class. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. Both RFK and the situation with no labels really shows the dissatisfaction in both parties. People are tired of same old, same old. They're tired of these politicians that are putting party loyalty above their duty to their constituents. And we are seeing a backlash. Now, my big concern is that an RFK third party run and a no labels third party run would just cannibalize each other and leave us, essentially where we are right now with the two parties battling it out. But it does show that people are tired of this and the parties are going to have to listen, especially since it looks like if no labels goes through, they have already said they will be on the ballot in all 50 states. It looks like RFK is going to get on the ballot in all 50 states. That has never happened before. Two brand new independent parties both achieving ballot access in all 50 states. So,
Well, just my own, actually, my own, maybe the listeners' information or curiosity as well. Ross Perot didn't do that. I don't know. I'm asking you.
I'm not sure if he did. I think he did. But again, that was
Okay.
one third party. I'm saying this is the first time it's ever
Okay.
happened with two separate ones. I do believe Ross Perot was on in all 50 states. I could be wrong about that. But
Okay. Just it's
yeah, but it's an unprecedented place in time where people are finally saying, you know what? We don't have to be loyal to parties when they're not loyal to us.
I would agree, and you never know. I mean, history is history. Everything runs its course, and maybe the two-party system is actually literally well, a little bit figuratively bankrupt. I'm not enamored with the Republican Party. I'm conservative, but they've as much, no, not as much, but they've screwed things up as well in there. I mean, look at George W. and his stupid, invasion of Iraq and all the other trillions he spent on nonsense. No child left behind. So, yeah, the Republicans are certainly not without fault, and maybe it is time for a change.
Yeah, and I think
I'm not really happy about Haley doing a no labels because I think it does cannibalize and it maybe softens the statement. I'd rather have it, the two parties and RFK right on their heels or maybe beating one of them. I think that would send a clearer signal. And I
it,
also I do question I should say, the, the true nature of no labels. If they really wanted to make a statement, why don't they embrace RFK?
well, RFK hasn't talked to them. So that's
Oh,
RFK's choice, not no labels. But no labels is talking about a bipartisan ticket. So it would be, say, Nikki Haley in one of the spots. And again, they've been talking to Joe Manchin for the other. So you would have one Democrat and one Republican on the ticket if no labels goes forward. And they haven't confirmed that they're going to. Basically, it's going to decide what's going to decide if no labels moves forward is if it is another Trump Biden election, which does look likely.
It looks very likely. There's no question about that. Yes, it's for me. I find it very troubling because I really do believe I'm not a big fan, but I do believe what he said is accurate. Lindsey Graham, that is, that if numbnuts gets another term, the U.S. will be unrecognizable.
Yeah,
You talk
and
about a clear and present danger. It's not, or an existential threat. It's not global warming. It's Joe Lunchpail Biden. Another term of him, it's check, please. So yes, I'm not, and the only one that can screw it up is Trump himself, obviously. So I'm not enamored with him in any way either.
no, but talking about another Biden term being disastrous, you know, Lindsey Graham said this. Obviously, he is a partisan Republican, but you're
Yes.
hearing the same thing from a lot of diehard Democrats, and the party refuses to allow any primary. But there are a lot of Democrats and some very prominent voices in the media who are saying enough is enough. Biden is not capable of doing the job. He was not capable of doing the term he's in now. He
No.
lied about what he was going to do when he got in. He promised to be a centrist. He promised to unite the country. He did completely the opposite, kowtowing to the left wing and making the divide greater. So Biden is fighting an uphill battle even among his own party.
Well, I think it's despicable, quite frankly. The powers to be, that is the Democratic apparatchik, his wife, and all the others involved in this tragedy. They knew that this guy was not capable. In fact, even at a because there's no way he can do any kind of a serious function or dialogue at that point. He was at Queen Latifah, some kind of a recognition of her
The
achievements,
the
and
Kennedy
he
Center
go ahead.
honors. It was the
Yes,
Ken.
Kennedy
Yeah.
Center. Yeah, yeah. And basically, yes, he screwed up even with a teleprompter about she won an Emmy. He said an enemy, but okay. That's whatever. Okay, I got that. Okay, that's par for the course. But then when the event ended, he was wandering around the stage. This guy has no, and then his wife had to lead him like a dog, or I think I had a better analogy, like a kindergarten class when they have strings when you have to go somewhere and all the kids hold the string. I mean, it's funny, but it's out of control. It's out of control. This guy is exponentially regressing mentally.
Yeah, and
It's no joke.
it's a bad situation. And he actually told his own supporters at a fundraiser over the weekend that the only reason he's running for a second term is because he's convinced he's the only person that can beat Trump. If Trump were not running the Republican Party as it is, and so far ahead of all the other candidates, he would not be running again. Even he knows he's not capable of this, but he's deluded himself into thinking he's the great white hope against the evil Donald Trump. Well, I hate to break this to him, but even his own party members are starting to look at the Trump presidency and say, you know what? We don't like him as a person, but his policies were a lot better than Biden's.
Well, speaking of policies, there was a poll that came out this week, and basically on policy, okay, when the personality comes in, Trump is still victorious or ahead of the polls in some ways significantly in swing states, except Wisconsin, but that's within the margin of error anyway. But on the issues, he's electrocuting Mr. Biden. It's like man
Well,
against boy. It's out of control.
there was a recent interview where Chris Cuomo stated
Yes.
that even he would support Trump over Biden based on policy. He doesn't like him as a person, but
No, we don't either.
right, and but based on policy, he would support Trump. And I have been saying this to a number of people, and I have been crediting you because you're the one that came up with this. But people are starting to realize when your house is on fire, you don't care if the fireman is an asshole.
No, no, absolutely. You don't ask for how their marriage is if they're a complete shithead on social media. No, I think people are, and I don't think, and I really do believe this, that the polls, you can talk about skewing, blah blah blah. I think just people that aren't really forthcoming as much as they want to be, or they're apprehensive about saying I'm supporting Trump. So I think even in Wisconsin, Trump is beating Biden.
It wouldn't surprise me, especially now that Muslim leaders have come together to try to stop a Biden second term because they're upset that he's supporting Israel, given what that support is. Well, they're not these Muslim leaders that came together are not supporting Trump. They're just trying to stop Biden. Well, guess what? That puts Trump in office.
Well, very interesting about this. Very interesting. You talk about I'll consider obviously Muslims being a minority group. Very interesting in Chicago that some black constituency and leadership in that city was basically because of the illegal immigration
Yep.
and them feeling slighted about all this aid going to people that aren't even citizens. They basically threatened, and this, I think the optics are going to be completely out of, or potentially completely out of control with pro Hamas rallies, anti Biden. What it could be a shit show. Basically, they're saying, you think it's going to be a peaceful convention? Guess what? I don't think so. Did you see that, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. And of course, the mayor of Chicago is blaming the far right for this,
Yeah.
which is hysterical because all I
And by the
every
way,
time,
he's a moron too. His
oh, yeah,
predecessor was mentally retarded. I know that's a politically incorrect term, but she was. And this guy's no Mensa candidate either. Welcome
no,
to Chicago.
yeah,
There you
well,
go.
it's hysterical because every time he starts blaming the right wing, which let's face it, the right wing is a very, very small minority in Chicago. Um,
Non-existent. How's that sound?
all I keep thinking of is Jussie Smollett saying he was attacked by people saying this is MAGA country in Chicago. It's like,
Yeah, there you go. Oh, speaking of that, it's really funny. A representative from Texas, speaking of, being completely out of touch, basically called her own state despicable. It was great at a hearing about talking about MAGA and how they go to states, and she mentioned Florida, she mentioned maybe and whatever other state it was, and then she says Texas, and she happens to be a representative from that state. Nice. And that even goes to the thing of like the whole aspect of the general dumbing down of America. We talk about the Ivy Leagues, which they had the leaders of the three most prestigious Ivy League universities in congressional hearings, and if that's the leadership, they were so effing stupid, and I was shocked. Not shocked. I was shocked actually. No mention of academic excellence or anything else. Basically talking about inclusion and all those other bullshit terms, and basically saying they weren't sure if anti-Semitic rhetoric was acceptable or not at their fine institution. So it's a general dumbing down.
it's a huge dumbing down. And unfortunately, it's not just in higher education, it is seeping down to K through 12. Math scores just came out in an international math test, and we got the lowest reports that we have achieved in over 20 years. Our students don't know how to do math anymore. Not only are we falling behind industrialized nations, we're falling behind everywhere.
Okay, a couple things on that I find interesting. And you're wrong. Do you know why? Because yeah, we might not be able to do math, but we are experts on LBGQXL7 and inclusion. So put that in your pipe and
Yeah.
smoke it. Just kidding, Dr. Lobkin. Yes, you're right. And it's really funny. Before the Department of Education was organized or established in the early 70s, we were like maybe third in education. Do you know that, Dr.
Yep.
Lobkin? And now we're 26th of industrial. I can't name 20. So basically, we're dead last. There you go, genius.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, 20, I can't name
it is
26 industrialized countries.
no,
No, we're dead last. There you go.
it has gotten to the point where the teachers union clearly doesn't care about kids' education. Randy Weingartner has made that very clear. Um,
Does she make your
the
skin crawl? I mean, is that one of the most
Yeah,
unattractive? I don't mean physically. Just God help her. Please stop it. Please make it
yeah,
stop. Yes.
she needs to be removed. Honestly, I believe until the teachers union can account for all of the COVID money that they had gotten that was unspent and that they still kept people out of schools, I believe that the Department of Education, the Department of Labor needs to decertify the teachers union until they replace their leadership. Because obviously, there's some hanky stuff going on. There's a lot of money missing, and they're not. We talked about on the podcast just a week or two ago about a teacher being assaulted in Queens by the students. The teachers union still has not said anything. So they're clearly not there for the teachers. They're obviously not there for the students. So what are they doing? I honestly think Weingartner's a crook and she's stealing money.
Well, I'll go one step further, quite frankly. Stop the Department of Education. I'm sorry. Now, in this world, results don't matter anymore. But when the world used to be sane and America was sane, results did matter. They don't anymore. Inclusion matters and equity. Yeah, the Department of Education just should be just acts goodbye. It's a big waste of money. It's detrimental. States should have their own jurisdiction under over education. Thank you, please. When we were
Yeah,
actually
I
good
I
in
don't
education.
see, but I don't know that that's going to work anymore because you have states like New York, states like California. Remember, California controls the California university system. And rather than raising the bar on reading and writing, UC Berkeley decided they didn't want to give remedial classes anymore, so they dropped the requirement for reading and writing. This is the people that would be in charge of K through 12
Yeah, but you
if
know something? I think in some ways that might be good because just like economically people are fleeing blue states to red, I think educationally, because at least there will be bastions of of areas where education is working, and it will point to the nonsense of liberalism and education.
Yeah, I think it's even more dire than that. I think our entire educational system, from the Department of Education at the top all the way down to the local school boards, everything needs to be reimagined. We need to we are dealing with a system that was put together what 1940s, 1930s. It's
Maybe like how was
maybe
1900 sound?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a system that was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. We
Yeah,
need
you know
to
something. But I can deal with that. What I can't deal with is how um, standards, how focusing on the what reading, writing, and I don't think that's even used anymore. Okay, so the other shit, okay, I got it. It's antiquated. What a lot of things are antiquated. But when you're, and then when I looked at these Ivy League leaders, my God, are you effing kidding me? I mean, again, it's like they're on acid, inclusion
well
and
again,
blah.
we don't have
Jesus Christ.
we don't have an education system anymore. We have an indoctrination system. The entire from K through 12 all the way up through graduate degrees. Everything is focused on indoctrinating students into their way of thinking. And we're starting to see it where realistically, do you want somebody who is studying to be a doctor to excel in biology? Or do you want them to be more worried about people's feelings, how it's going to, when you tell them, they have cancer? It's like, guess
I
what?
want them to
Cure,
be experts. I
I
want them
want
to
them
be
to
experts
cure
in
what's wrong.
LBGQ. No, I want them to be experts in LBGQ and inclusion. when I have a terminal disease.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening. This is why, our education system is truly screwed up.
Well, I would even say our corporate system is screwed up. You have morons, which is um, an outgrowth of the educational system. And look at some of the dumbasses in corporate America. You look at Iger at Disney. How do you f that up? Okay, and his predecessor, another genius. Okay, Bud Light. I mean, the list goes on. So
Well, but
it's permeated all through our society,
the different
dumbing down.
the difference though is in corporate there are shareholders that hold them accountable. We have seen over the past year dozens of major corporations fire their DEI experts, and they're not just getting rid of the people, they're getting rid of the departments and not rehiring. Bob Iger at an investor conference uh, last week stated point blank they made a mistake in putting messages before storytelling. And that is not going to happen anymore going forward because the shareholders have had it. So at least shareholders are holding corporations responsible. There's nobody holding the education system responsible.
Point well founded. Speaking about holding people responsible, the White House is not going through, at least right now, on their Hanukkah lighting ceremony. And also, the state of Virginia is canceling theirs. The state of Virginia spokesperson said that they're not doing theirs because they don't want to take sides. Welcome to America, 2023. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is,
And Philadelphia as well. And Philadelphia. Let's not exclude that.
yeah, this is cowardice at its most base because
Placating.
they are placating these violent mobs, such as the mob that was in Philadelphia a few days
Threatening.
ago, threatening a store owner just because he happened to be born in Israel, hasn't lived there in God knows how long, isn't part of the Israeli government, never was, but they're blaming him for what's going on in the Middle East. So this is absolutely ridiculous. The holidays are bringing out all sorts of strange little things. Prior to this year, the Biden family put up stockings for all of their grandkids on the fireplace at the White House. Now, if you remember last year, they got a lot of blowback because they did not put a stocking up for Hunter's illegitimate daughter. And
Mm-hmm.
they got a lot of criticism for not acknowledging that they had this granddaughter. Well, this year rolled around, and they've said they acknowledge that that is their granddaughter. And instead of giving her a stocking along with the rest of the family, they've decided not to post stockings this year. So even
He's a
though
brave, isn't he a
yeah,
brave person, a man of
even
principle?
yes,
He's just an amazing
even
guy.
though they said yes, we acknowledge, they are doing everything in their power not to acknowledge that granddaughter.
It's basically the quintessential grifter and white trash family. We'll see how it all plays out. There's increasing pressure on basically subpoenas of Hunter and impeachment. So we'll see how that all works out. Well,
Yeah,
you did mention the whole thing. Oh, go ahead.
and they just, talking about the impeachment moving forward, they just unveiled hundreds of emails from Joe Biden to Hunter's business associates while Joe was vice president. So, yeah, the noose is getting tighter and tighter around Joe's neck.
I have a twisted sense of humor. Do you know what I love about that? Is if you're gonna be slick and embezzle and be you get away with it if you have a brain. I'm not suggesting it's something that I condone, but you have someone that is basically never even before his mental decline was never a Mensa candidate, a real moron. So basically it's a bad Columbo episode
No.
with someone who's deficient to say the least. There's probably more smoking guns than at a Grateful Dead concert. There you go.
And yet the mainstream media keeps yelling, "Oh, there's no evidence. Oh, there's no evidence." The bank records themselves are enough to have him indicted. So I don't
Well,
know.
something there's an oxymoron to say that it's media. There's no such thing as media,
Yeah,
or at least corporate media. That's a joke. That ship sailed, I would say, 10 years ago. It's a
at
joke.
least.
At least there you go. Speaking of a joke, we have Menendez, Robert Menendez, I believe, that the senator from the esteemed state of New Jersey. No, again, Fetterman. I do agree with one thing. He's been trolling Menendez, and he also said that he believes that again, hello, 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 Shazam, that the best and the brightest aren't in our political system. Again, you're talking about the two-party system, and here you have another Mensa candidate, Menendez. First of all, greedy son of a bitch and dumber than rocks. And again, typical liberal. Let's blame my Cuban heritage. Oh, your parents weren't even born in Cuba,
Well,
you dumbass.
yeah, Fetterman stated point blank, if George Santos, who has not been convicted of anything yet, was removed from the House, then the Senate needs to do the same thing to Menendez.
I agree with him.
And, I have to give Fetterman credit where credit is due. We made a lot of comments early on about his inability to form sentences, about he should have pulled out of the race. I have seen him speak a number of times over the last couple of weeks. He is finally starting to recover from the stroke. Now, do I think he should have, stayed in the race? No, I think he should have left, taken the time to recover properly, and then he could have thrown his hat into the ring next time around. But he is starting to recover, which is something we'll never see from Biden. But
No, that
it's
ship sailed.
yeah, it's good to see that, yes, he is finally starting to come around and he is speaking better.
And I like that he had
He's
the balls to challenge someone in his own party, a
Yes.
despicable son of a bitch that the Democrats are never capable of. They didn't tell Biden he's a friggin' moron and not to run, and they'll have anyone a ham sandwich, so to speak, in office as long as it serves their needs. Look at Feinstein in California. Hello,
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
amoebas that had more.
we have so many people in office that they might have been fantastic when they
Might.
entered office, but they've been in so long, they are no longer capable of doing the job. And this is not party specific. There's enough people in both parties that should be thrown out because they are simply not capable of doing the job anymore. And this is why we need term limits for the House and the Senate.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I also said once, yeah, the Rolling Stones were awesome, like in 1975, but like that's a long time ago. Feinstein, others, they've in Biden, please. It's not, it's not good. It's not a good, it's not a good look. And speaking of a not a good look, we look at the women's movement. Has that train left the station? I like to use that overused metaphor today, but yeah, look at the women's movement and or lack thereof. Not a lot of discussion about what went on with Hamas, and you also have AOC, the girl genius, basically saying if men are prevented from entering into women's athletics, that will basically usher in people to or women forcing them to have their private parts examined. When is Boston University going to lose their accreditation? I mean, she got out of there with an economics degree. How does that happen?
Yeah, her stupidity knows no bounds. But yeah, I
No
don't know
bounds.
what has happened to the women's movement. They've been silent on Hamas raping and assaulting Jewish women. And when they do come out, Planned Parenthood finally made a statement about how horrific this was. What, 2 months after it happened? They, even when they do make a statement, they hedge it. There, I can't remember the name of it. There was one women's group that finally, after 2 months, posted on Twitter how horrific it was. And they pulled the tweet down because they were getting backlash from these pro Hamas morons.
Nutcases.
It's like,
Yes, morons.
so who are these women's groups there to protect? Because they're
They're
not
protecting liberalism. They're not
yeah,
protecting
they're not
women's
protect
rights.
no,
They
they're
don't give
not
a shit about
protecting
women.
women.
They give a shit about the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
Sorry,
they're
true.
not protecting women against the trans community in sports in Title IX. They're not protecting Jewish women. They're not condemning Hamas for their horrific treatment of women. And quite frankly, they're not condemning any of the Muslim countries over the conditions that women are under Sharia law. So this is a huge group of women that these women's groups have just abandoned. So
Because it
why do
doesn't fit their
this?
needs. And again, they've lost all relevancies. Again, I had the Stones metaphor. Well, the women's movement was really, happening like burning bras a la 1970, whatever. It's over. Women can stand for themselves. They don't need a corrupt organization that basically has lost any moral conviction. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, an even newer organization. I mean, how notice the deafening silence from the Me Too movement, who just a few years ago was yelling, every woman needs to be believed. And yet they're not believing the victims of Hamas. They're not believing the witnesses of, who saw the atrocities. And even worse, they're not believing the autopsies that have medical evidence of how of the abuse these women suffered at the hands of Hamas.
The party of science, yes, but overall, everything, no pun intended, trumps liberalism. In other words, if it doesn't fit their agenda, if it was Islamic babies or women being raped, burned, you couldn't get 24/7 on every network, every tweet, every social media platform. But the crickets are sounding because right now Jews don't fit the agenda. They're basically no longer needed. Thank you. Check, please. This is not
Yeah, it
1965.
is.
And speaking of Jews that don't understand that reality, boy genius movie producer Spielberg and some other shitheads are having a fundraiser for Democrats and Biden in particular. And Mr. Spielberg, you may create and produce and direct excellent movies, but you're a dumbass. Thank you very. You're just a stupid asshole because you came out with a letter like 3 months ago about an open letter about anti-Semitism. Hey, shithead, it's the policies that you embrace and the people you support that are basically behind it. You dumb mother, you know what? Thank you very much.
Yeah, it amazes me how people are not seeing what's right in front of their face. And I mean, Jews in general are actually seeing it. Obviously, Spielberg does not. But there was a great line. Oh, Jessica Tarloff, who's on Fox, who I generally don't agree with her on almost anything, but
Anything. I can't stand her,
she
actually. Go ahead.
she was on America's Newsroom a few days ago talking about where are the women's groups and why is this deafening silence happening. And she actually said, I am horrified to realize how little my life means to people. And
Well,
that's
Jessica, I got news for you. No, no, I've seen her from time to time on the Five and other broadcasts, and no, she needs to smell the coffee too. And
oh yeah.
she's horrified what happened in Israel. Hey, shithead, it's your ideology and your policies that you so fervently support, and you are a contributor. There you go. So get off your fucking ass, get it, learn what's going on, and stop being married to your corrupt ideology and your anti-Semitic ideology. How do you like that one?
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing that, and we are, again, we are starting to see, we're seeing an uptick in gun ownership among Jewish households. We are seeing leaving the Democratic Party, which I find hysterical because the Democrats are desperately trying to show they support Israel, and they're doing it so well that they're offending the Muslims, but so poorly that they're not actually doing anything except for spouting rhetoric. So they're losing a good portion of Jews, they're losing a good portion of Muslims. It's time to stop playing politics. Started this podcast out talking about the importance of these third party runs. It is time you stop being loyal to a party and start doing what's right for your people, for the country, for the world. And you need to start being realistic about what your policies are doing. There was a great Kevin O'Leary, who is the head of O'Leary Ventures and the host of
Mm-hmm.
Shark Tank, was at the Global Climate Summit. And he reported on what he saw at this summit. And he said he is incredibly optimistic now because countries around the world are starting to say, yeah, you know what? We need to start drilling for more oil because otherwise we're going to run out of power before all of these artificial deadlines hit. We have to start looking at this realistically, saying all of these 2035 deadlines are never going to happen unless people actually start suffering, which nobody wants their constituents to do. So he was actually very optimistic about everybody except for John Kerry, who represented the US government, who was spouting all sorts of bullshit that's never going to happen.
And gas.
Yes.
And gas and
And
gas.
and
And by the way, he should tell his wife, talk about the tragedies and the terrific death tolls of global warming, which is suspect to say the least. How about the Heinz Corporation and all the bullshit food they perpetuate and market to our kids, a la diabetes, obesity? You got 30 minutes? The list is pretty
yeah,
long. So, just shut the hell up. We end with the death of Norman Lear, a icon of the 70s, a trailblazer. Your thoughts?
yeah, he
The death of
to I mean, to steal a line from a show he had nothing to do with, he went where no man had gone before, creating All in the Family, which he had licensed a show called, I believe it was Till Death Do Us Part. He created All in the Family from that. He created The Jeffersons, which was one of the first show to focus on an African American family. He tackled taboo topics that nobody would have imagined seeing on television. He brought conversations to the American household that needed to be had, that were previously taboo. And he did it over and over again. He talked about feminism with Maud. He talked about being a single parent with One Day at a Time. He talked about the African American experience with both the Jeffersons moving on up and Good Times talking about a working class African American family. And he dared to go where the censors never wanted to go, where the studios never wanted to go. And he brought these topics into the American household. And that contribution is, beyond words. He literally changed America. just by making those conversations happen.
I would agree. Well, Dr. Lopkin, that concludes another edition of Carnivore Bites. Good show. Any closing thoughts?
Just we'd love to hear from our listeners. You can contact us through the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking about. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website at xvadio.com/podcast, at the Apple Podcasts app. And now you can find us at the new Xvadio Podcast Network channel on Apple Podcasts, as well as Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. We will see you get together next week.
We'll see you then.